We're going to be replacing the triple 55-inch TVs you see on the flight simulator with triple 48-inch LG OLED monitors. And you know, I just don't know if I've made the right decision with this. Now this video is going to be a little bit more rough cut, it's going to be more raw. You're going to see in behind the cockpit, you're going to get to see the entire structure that makes up the stand for the displays, and you'll get to see in behind the actual cockpit, which can sometimes be a bit of a mess. As well as these monitors, we will be installing Bezel Free Kit. I actually have two of these because of the size. We're going to have to kind of like match them up together. And we'll see how all that goes throughout the video. So let's get started on it. We'll pull the whole cockpit out, leaving just the monitor stand. Now the full cockpit sits on a set of sliders underneath this board, which just slide along the carpet. I reckon that could be almost enough room. And you can see the absolute abomination of what's in behind this. A lot of stuff going on here. We've got some USB hubs, powered USB hub. We've got the two G1000s from Flight Sim Builder running into those hubs. The Brunner force feedback yoke, which is screwed down to the base. Some virtual fly equipment and the all-important Stream Deck. And then all the power is here, and it runs one single cable. This gives you a reasonable idea of what all this actually looks like and behind the glare shield. It's not pretty, but unfortunately it always kind of just ends up like this with the amount of equipment coming on and off for reviews and testing. You know, it's hard to keep it tidy. Anyway, that's a job for the next few weeks, because right now it's time to remove the overhead light, the overhead monitor. Shit, I think we'll vacuum that up first. Now these just sit just inside the channel of the extrusion. There we go. Somebody did ask me the other day there, am I worried about going to smaller size? And the answer is yes. The reason I went for the triple 55s was the sense of scale. And I am worried that I'm no longer going to have that, and I'm hoping that the benefit of the OLED kind of offsets that. Oh, that was close. So this is the monitor stand as it stands with absolutely nothing on it. Let's just ignore the overhead stand at the moment and just talk about the bottom portion, which holds, or did hold, the three 55-inch TVs. Now this is made out of two Next Level Racing Elite monitor stands. You could always buy the triple monitor stand, however, it's not compatible with 55-inch TVs. Just the size and the weight makes it kind of tricky. So what I did was I bought two single Elite monitor stands, did a bit of jiggery pokery as they say. I added this piece, this beam of extrusion in the back to give me the width in the center, and that allowed me to use the two what would have been central beams on the single monitor stand on the edges or the side monitors. And because I've had a few extrusion cockpits in the past, I've got heaps of extrusion scraps, including some bits and pieces of Next Level Racing extrusion attachments. I was able to fashion this little add-on monitor stand for the overhead. And you can still see I've got some of the existing wires and cables running through the back here, and the PC actually sits on a unit just behind the monitor stand, which you never usually see in any of the YouTube videos. And the bottom of the monitor stands at the front, I don't think you can see it on this video. I'll probably shove some overlay in here. I've got these little triangle brackets that just sit on the front of these two legs. And because of the way, like the shape that it makes, it's, you know, it's fairly stable. It's not gonna fall over on itself. And I don't have any large pieces of extrusion on the floor, which just makes it a lot more, well, for one, it makes it a lot nicer looking, but you're just not going to trip up over anything. That's easier to get in and out. So I think we'll chuck up the first monitor in the center. We'll try and gauge if it's going to be at the right height or not. And then we'll throw on the right and left monitor, get it all connected up and get it up and running. Jesus Christ. Now, two of these monitors are actually factory seconds, which means they've been factory refurbished. There's maybe some minor damage, but technically they should be 100% fully working. And it looks in pretty good nick to me. That looks pretty small. Let's just not panic just yet. We'll make some adjustments to the frame. Okay, now we've got the second screen on, and you can clearly see the gap that's formed up. Now these televisions, these monitors are mounted in the exact same position as the 55-inch TVs. So we went from 55 inches down to 48, and you can see the kind of gap that's opened up. A good way to visualize how much smaller it actually is. And honestly, I never thought there was going to be that much of a visual difference, but there is. Would you look at that? The contrast. We haven't even got the sim on yet. It's at this point where we're going to install the Asus Bezel Free Kit. But honestly, these things are as bent as a corner kick. I don't know how we're going to actually attach them, because quite clearly the brackets that come with these are not going to hold them to the monitor. So I'm going to have to investigate some different ways of putting them on, some different ways of attaching them, and I'm probably going to come back to the Asus Bezel Free Kit in a day or two. And I actually meant to mention at the start of the video that the reason this is on a wooden platform is because we've got a motion platform attached to it. And that's going to allow me to just slide the cockpit around with motion attached. This might actually line up better than I thought. Now you can see full tilt on the motion platform is actually pretty close to that side monitor. So that is about as far as we can actually push it in terms of how close we can get this to the monitors. Now you can see this gap that's left from the yoke base to the underside of the monitor, and that's really important. Because this motion platform is based on the back, it's going to pivot from the front, and that's going to introduce a little bit of movement in here. Now that should be, in fact I think it'll easily be enough clearance for the cockpit when motion is turned back on. And one of the other things I just checked was my eye line to the monitor. Now without measuring it, it actually looks like my eye line is fairly central to the monitor, which, to be honest, is a bit of blind luck. Without the simulator in there, honestly, I thought it was going to be too small. But I guess the proof in the pudding is going to be when we actually get the flight sim up and running and everything connected. So it's a few days later and we've got the simulator kind of fixed height wise, and to be honest, pure luck. Normally that thing takes a lot of back and forth, and as if by magic it just happened first time round. And we've also ordered this. Now this is double-sided tape, and I'm going to give you a little close-up of it here. It's like 3mm wide. Now this is what we're going to use to stick on the Bezel Free Kit. I'll put the link in the description to this exact tape on Amazon. Now if at any point this starts to fall off or peel off or doesn't work, the link's going to be removed. So just keep that in mind if you go looking for it. So it turns out trying to stick the Asus Bezel Free Kit with a thin sort of sticky tape onto the screen, like directly onto screen, just didn't work for me. They were just peeling off. I kind of went back to using the supplied sort of mounting kit. So I am going to have to come up with something that we can just maybe stick these central parts down on to the monitor. For the guy that put the article on the Sim Racing Reddit page, I owe you a beer, because this is way tidier, it's way cleaner the way this has been set up by pulling that fishing line and hooking it onto the back of the frame from the monitor, which has pulled all of that in. You can see in both of these it's sitting pretty flush. Now we're going to get this all switched on, we're going to get the sim rig in, and we're going to fire up Flight Simulator, or probably X-Plane actually, and really see what difference OLED and the Bezel Free Kit has actually made. Showing you on camera right now does not do it justice. The image from the OLED monitors is amazing. So this takes us to the bigger question. The OLED monitor upgrade, was it actually a mistake? Does the extra benefits justify the cost? And the short answer, I'm afraid, is no. As much as I'm in love with this, I don't think it's worth it. Apart from the Bezel Free Kit, I recommend that to anybody. Look, not worth it is a bit too much of a blanket statement. There's a few grey areas here for this. So quickly, let's just recap the benefits and the downsides compared to the old TV setup. And for the benefits, number one would be no connection issues. It just works every time. In comparison to having the TVs with those DisplayPort to HDMI converters, every now and then they would flick it on and off. Sometimes one television wouldn't turn on with the other two. That's been completely eradicated with the actual OLED PC monitors. There's no need to turn on and off the monitors like I have to do with TVs. Sounds like a very small thing, but it's definitely a nice to have, as these monitors, like any other PC monitor, just switch on and off with the PC. Night flying is incredible, and I mean incredible. Anyone else with an OLED, chime in here in the comments. The audio is much better, certainly from this model of monitor anyway, so no need for extra speakers. The colours and the viewing angles, not to mention the uniformity across the entire display, is way better. VRR works in a much larger range, and that's important. I think it's around 30 to 120 Hz in comparison to the TV, which was 48 to 60, so much narrower on the TVs. The contrast across the board and the use of HDR in both X-Plane and Microsoft Flight Simulator is great. The OLEDs have a matte finish to the screen, which is gorgeous. absolute minimum reflection. Overall, the experience is just better in almost every single way. And it's not by a small amount either. Now for the downsides. The price has got to be the biggest one. At more than twice the price of my 55-inch TVs, the price is a big difference. Then the size, being a bit smaller, I can see and feel a difference, although I think I will get used to it, as I haven't lost too much of that sense of scale. But if you were to give me the option in size, I'd go back to 55-inch if I could. And then there's the fact of having to be more aware of screen burn-in. Now, I think the general consensus is that we don't really need to worry about that anymore, but it's still in the back of my mind. And then there's heat. Now, I was hoping that these would run cooler than the televisions. They actually pump out more heat from the screen surface. I can feel it right here, but less heat emitting from the back. So maybe it kind of evens itself out overall, but definitely no benefit there. Considering those points, there really isn't that much of a downside compared to the upside, apart from the price, which again is twice as much, but it just doesn't offer twice the experience